I got a lot of questions on the field about programming of Spektrum radios, and I figured out that maybe doing a small video about the programming of a sailplane on the IX12 might help a lot of modelers. So I'm just going to be doing the programming of a scale sailplane that's going to be using 7 channels: rudder, elevator, 2 ailerons, 2 flap. First thing is to change to create a new model with just a single tap. Proceed. The 3 dot here for having the menu add the model. I'm going to use a default model. I'm going to use a sailplane. I'm going to create a sailplane. So now I'm going to be grabbing that new sailplane here. I'm going to change here the name. It's going to be a BS1. Then going back to the main screen here. And one of the first things that I'm going to do is binding my receiver. So I have here a 9320 with telemetry and integrated varimeter. So I'm going to start binding it. So I'm going to power and press the bind button. The lights are blinking, so I'm just going to push the bind button on the radio, holding it.
Bind complete. ESMX 22 milliseconds.
So we'll go here.
Telemetry.
So now probably having a look at the telemetry. So going to model setup, going to telemetry, and doing auto config on the telemetry. So now I have everything that the receiver can do is currently in. So I could set up on the different menus some alerts and so on, but it's not going to be for now. And I can see by moving the home screen that I have all the telemetry screen: main, max, volt, altitude, speed. So we should be good to go in regarding telemetry. One of the first things that I do for setting up a model is going to be first on selecting on the sailplane type. So the wings here are going to be 2 ailerons and 2 flaps. Tail going to be a standard tail, and the switch for the motor, I'm going to activate the left slider. So I have the left slider has throttle control. Going back to the home screen. And now I'm going to stay on the model setup and going to the flight mode. So on the flight mode, what I like to do is having my D switch here, being able to have the join function of the flight mode and the dual rate. So I'm going to select switch 1 here. I'm going to flick the switch, so it's selected. I like to have the bottom being not launch but being speed. So I'm going to speed. The middle one being cruise, so we're okay.
Land.
And this one being thermal.
Thermal.
So I have thermal, low rate, cruise, mid rate, speed, high rate. Now again on the model setup, The next thing that I'm going to do is having a look at the channel assign. So before looking at the channel assign, I'm going to have a look at where are the channel that the radio is allocating. So we have left aileron, right aileron, elevator, rudder, right flap, left flap, and motor. So the first 7 channels are pre-assigned, which is what we will see in the channel assign. So on channel assign, we have our first 7 channels that are NA has they're already pre-assigned. I'm gonna allocate the aux3 to the right slider. This is where I like to have my flaps. The aux here, I'm gonna inhibit hit on aux4 and aux5. And we're good to go. We can go selecting, let's say, the receiver port assignment, but they're what I like them to be. So I'm going to go back to the main screen. So more or less here we have selected everything in the model setup that I was willing to configure prior starting. And now we're going to be able to go after the model adjust. So it's where usually I cut down the throw of the servo just to be sure that I'm not going to be burning the servo by just plugging it, having too much throw on them. So I'm going to cut down the throw on each of them by 50%, so I can have a little bit of a safety feature. The cursor, or you can use the plus and the minus sign. I'm going to do the same for every servo. After that, I'm going to go working on the motor cut, just to add a safety feature to it. So I like to use this switch for that purpose. So we can see that here I have my motor that's currently on with the switch flicked on the 0 position, and if it's in the middle position or position number 2, I'm going to be able to have no control over the motor, which is pretty nice and kind of safe. On the cambers, there is different way to have them organized. You can have the camber preset with a flight mode switch. This is not really how I like to fly my sailplane. I like to have control over the flaps on the sliders here. And to have the crow with the flaps and the aileron, because the sailplane don't have spoiler on the throttle stick. So I can, using camber system, having crow on the main stick, on the throttle stick, but I can't have at the same time the flaps that are standalone. So I'm going to use that slider to do that, and for that purpose I'm going to use a mixing, and I'm going to use a regular mixing where the input channel is going to be the slider, which was aux3. We set that up as aux3 on the channel assign, and the output going to be this time the right flap. So both flaps going to be controlled. One thing that you need to know to be able to see if you have some action is to be sure that you have the mix assigned on a switch or always on. So it's going to be always on here, as I want my slider to be able always to access to the flap. So the rate, I'm going to be inputting the deflection on the flap. So I'm going to start with something like 25% or 20% on both ends. let's say 33%. Let's put it at 33%. And it's on. So what I'm gonna do also is doing the same for the ailerons. So I'm gonna use a second mix for that, where I'm gonna use again aux3 and has the exit channel being left ailerons. Switch is on and rate is about 30%. So I can see now that using my slider, you have your ailerons and your flaps that are moving accordingly, which is nice. And now I'm going to set up the crow on the camber system. So on the camber system, the input going to be the spoiler stick. I'm going to go having 100% offset, which means this is the offset position. And I'm going to be able to put in my flaps on the proper deflection. So I will do that after setting up the max throw on the servo positioning, and I will come back to this screen with the adequate value just to show you. So that's about it for this screen here, and we're ready to power the model and see what it's doing. So one of the first things that has been done is just adjusting, let's say, the way that the servo are operating. So you have the reverse tab on this screen, the first screen on the model just for the servo setup. I also like to set up absolute travel for the flap and the aileron, so the mix is not going to be overshooting maximum value and burning servo. Of course, setting up the neutral of the control surface using the sub-trim, and if you need it, cutting down the travel. For example, here I cut down the travel on the elevator and the rudder. So let's go back having a look at the mixing. So I decided to set up the mixing here on the flaps. So I have a very little mix, so I have only 10% on this one with switch always on, which we mean my control surface here is just deflecting, full deflection, just enough for just doing some turtling either on any of the mode. So as you can see, the entire trailing edge has camber here. Let's have a look now at the camber system. So on the camber system, so I got my spoiler stick, my offset is 100%, and I figured out here that my flaps were needing to be down about 31% and the aileron up about 40%. So this is what it does to the trailing edge. So it should be landing fairly decently.